And welcome everybody to the Daily Space Weather. We've got additional CMEs having occurred here. We'll be bringing you the most detailed imagery you'll find anywhere in the known universe here on the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. So, fresh solar imagery. Is that last coronal mass ejection earthly directed? We'll let you know later in the video. Let's take a look at some detailed imagery as we go stargazing. So we're looking at 171 plus 193 angstroms today. Let's start out in the northwest limb. We've got some sunspots setting up there. That increases their likelihood of producing large solar flares. Well-defined coronal hole rotating in there past the Earth-directed zone. On the left of your screen, here is the southwestern limb. Some significant sunspots about to set down there as well. So the likelihood for additional and continued flaring indeed does continue. Also a coronal hole down here. It is of south pole orientation. We'll talk about that later in the video. Here is the southeastern limb. Decent sunspot group having just risen there. And what about the northeastern limb? It's been the most active portion of the closest star here for the past 24 hours. As that new sunspot group indeed is quite magnetically complex. We'll show you some more detailed imagery of that later in the video as well, talking about its magnetic fields and so on. There is the extreme close-up of sunspot 3169. Let's blast through some information about volcanoes and earthquakes here. First, volcanoes. Shivaluch is erupting, producing a 13,000-foot ash plume in an explosive fashion. Flight level 140 over Semeru. Flight level 210 over Popocatépetl. As Popocatépetl explodes, it's a 21,000-foot ash plume over central Mexico. Over Guatemala, we've got a 15,000-foot ash plume as Fuego also explodes. Nevado de Ruiz also exploding. Flight level 210. Flight level 210 over Sangay, located in Ecuador. 16,000-foot ash plume or a flight level 160 over Revenador as it explodes, and also Sabancaya exploding, producing a 27,000-foot plume of volcanic ash or a flight level 270. Please don't pole vault the caldera. Seismically speaking, the largest quake of the past 24 hours was a 5.6 at Japan. So nothing in the 6 magnitude range. We did see a 5.0 in between Portugal and the Azores there. Coming at you a little bit later than normal today here with a daily space weather. That 5.8 in Japan came in at 8:06 Universal Time yesterday evening. 1806 yesterday evening. There was also a 5.0 at the Reykjanes Ridge, located in the North Atlantic there, at the Mid-Atlantic Ridge area. And also a 5.1 at Japan. So pretty seismically calm here over the past 24 hours. And let's get back to space. So here's the ionized helium wavelength. And again, we did have multiple coronal mass ejections in the past 24 hours. One of them from up here. One of them from down here. I believe that was at the end right there. We've had a little drop in the radio flux here. We may see that coming back up, as sunspot 3169 is indeed quite complex. So radio flux now at 155 solar flux units. It comes from the upper chromosphere and lower corona. There is the 1-year graph of the radio flux. You can see the sunspot number having recently exceeded that, making it to just barely the highest level that we've seen so far for solar cycle 25. That's the red line. The black line is the radio flux number. And Space Weather Enthusiast Dashboard not forecasting any space weather storms or geomagnetic unrest. I think we may see a brief period of geomagnetic unrest or mild geomagnetic storm by midday tomorrow. So we are expecting a CME impact from the 16th. Expected tomorrow around noon on Monday, December 19th. So let's take a look at some more data here. Here is the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space, and it is very geomagnetically calm here at the moment. You got a very slow and quite diffuse solar wind. So that's what Earth's magnetic moment from space most likely looks like. It is the Space Weather Modeling Framework. If you want to read about that, click on the Details tab on the Geospace Magnetosphere movie. You can download the data about the Space Weather Modeling Framework. Here is the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. And make sure you stay tuned until later in the video when we look at the ionosphere, because we've seen the South Atlantic anomaly become the South Pacific anomaly. Yes, the weakest point in Earth's magnetosphere has shifted into the southern Pacific Ocean instead of being over the South American continent. That's the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. KP index here coming up off the floor over 1 now. 1.33 is the current KP index, a measurement of Earth's geomagnetism. And looking at the real-time solar wind here, again, a very slow solar wind, dropping here below 300 kilometers per second. Current conditions are only 292 kilometers per second. Solar wind density, 3.12 protons per cubic centimeter. So not only slow, but also diffuse is the solar wind. Next, looking at magnetic data. There are your GOES magnetometers. They measure the magnetic field around the Earth from their geosynchronous orbit at like 23,000 miles of altitude. Continuing on to our ecliptic view, our top view ecliptic plane field plot. Earth remains in a North Pole current sheet. It could change here in a couple days. We'll be keeping an eye on it. And when I say ion, well, pardon the pun. Moving to our line of sight field plots. There is the sun's B field in blue, north solar polar field in green, south solar polar field in red. And let's move to coronal holes next, as we've got two well-defined ones facing the Earth. One of South Pole orientation, one of North Pole orientation. Here's some more imagery of that from the SDO in 211 angstroms wavelength. Part of the extreme ultraviolet light spectrum. This one is south. This one is north. This one is also north. As the solar polar field reversal process is taking its good old time, we've got a long way to go in terms of solar activity for solar cycle 25. We are nowhere near solar maximum. Next, looking at sunspots. One of the measurements of the solar activity. And they've been largely stable here over the past 24, although a bunch of new umbrae have risen there behind the main umbra of sunspot 3169. So some increased sunspot numbers from that, while the sunspot number also decreasing as sunspots set in the west. I don't count sunspots, I just report. Here's the current situation. Likelihood of solar flares, really high. Although the overall X-ray flux has dropped a little bit. We'll get to that here in a moment. First, let's look at sunspots. Here we've taken the SDO continuum and added 193 angstroms to show the extended corona. And you can see lots of plasma there suspended by those sunspot groups associated with sunspot 3169. Let's zoom in a little bit closer here, and we'll drop the 193 angstroms. There's just the SDO continuum by itself. Looks like a little bit of growth of this sunspot group down here in the southeast. So yeah, some additional umbrae forming there with that sunspot group. So we may see the sunspot number remain pretty stable here as well. Sunspots themselves remaining pretty stable. So there's the GOES proton flux. No relativistic particles here showing up, at least as measured by the GOES. And we'll get to the X-ray emissions here in a moment. First, take a moment to press like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Check out our playlists if you haven't seen the 12 Days of Smashmas. We released original music on the first 12 days of the month of December, so check that out. We've also got playlists about terms defined and do one thing and ownage, food and drink, yeah, even cosmology segments. Check those out. Always some fascinating, interesting information when it comes to cosmology. Smashomash.org presents the sun and so forth. Again, press like, subscribe, share, etc. Tell your friends and foes about the channel, because we are rather convinced that YouTube is not recommending the content. The most detailed space weather in the world and detailed imagery of the sun. Check out the merch as well. You can find links below the video to that, as well as on the homepage at smashomash.com. Some of it's designed to be controversial. Some of it's designed not to. Some of it may reflect our views, and some of it may not reflect our views. But in any case, forgive, remember, and hold accountable. Today's featured product is our third best seller, actually. And of course, today I'm wearing my Fauci Face of Evil Fraudster shirt. And congratulations on surviving a global pandemic so far. Our third bestseller is Mensa, Make Earth Not Suck Again. It's up to you. It's not up to giant bureaucracies that are unable to get out of their own way. They've been making Earth suck for the past pushing 3 years. What are your thoughts on that? Let us know in the comments. Here's what I'm currently wearing. I've got two different products on. I've got the Mensa hat, and I've got the Fauci Face of Evil shirt. So there's the hat. Mensa, Make Earth Not Suck Again. It's up to you. Also, the Face of Evil. There you go. Fauci. Tony Fauci, fraudster, Face of Evil. It always seems to identify itself to you. If you decide to continue to follow it, well, that's on you. Fauci, Face of Evil, one of the other products that we peddle on our merch shop. So check the homepage at smashomash.com or the link to the Smasho merch. Links below the video to our homepage, etc. Help us out with clicks. Do your shopping via our links. Thanks to everybody who's picked up merch. Thanks to everybody who's done their part to make Earth not suck again for the past pushing 3 years. And let's get back to the space weather. So the GOES X-ray flux here, showing only one M-class flare for the past 24 hours. And let's take a look at where those emissions have been coming from via the SDO 131 angstroms wavelength. And that M-class flare indeed came from sunspot 3169. We'll let that play through a second time as I had my cursor over it. And there's that M-class flare. Let's look at it in 94 angstroms as well, shall we? And let's take a moment to orient ourselves. What's going on above our head? Well, the sun's just risen. The moon is high in the sky. Mars has recently set over Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. That's what's going on. That is our star chart. And let's do a solar system forecast. Here's where things are today. Here's where things will be in a week. We will have a crescent waxing moon on Christmas. You're 1 week from Christmas, folks. 1 week from Christmas. Next, looking at coronagraphs, comets, and coronal mass ejections. That's a triple C. Coronagraphs, comets, and coronal mass ejections. So this is yesterday's imagery from George Mason University, and it's a little bit more exciting when we look at today's. Some interesting CMEs yesterday. Today's CMEs are a little more interesting because one of them has an Earth-directed component. So there are those 42 frames. We'll also look at the information from Stereo A, located here at Lagrange 5, and the Soho Lasco C3, located here at Lagrange 1. And we paused it here at 9:05 this morning because this is another Earth-directed CME, so we can expect an impact from this right around the solstice. So sometime, well, probably late in the day on the 21st, maybe even early in the day on the 22nd. A minor impact from this. Most of the ejecta will miss Earth to the southwest. Some of the ejecta will likely strike Earth. We are seeing a partial halo there. So let's bring this back. Keep in mind it's a different time frame on stereo A versus the SOHO. The SOHO LASCO C3, that is. So another Earth-directed CME here, at least part of it. Expecting a minor impact strike there late in the day on the 21st. Perhaps early in the day on the 22nd. You can see it's actually still in the process of exiting the corona right now. So here's the last 24. You can see that starting to propagate there right at the end. Quite sure there is an Earth-directed component there in that last bit. Here's a little zoom out. You might be able to see it a little bit better there. I think there's a partial halo there. Maybe it'll be more obvious in the full zoom out. We don't see any activity on the far side of the sun, so the likelihood of that halo being anything besides earthly directed coronal mass ejection components is very low. Next we'll look at filaments. And we are playing Name That Filament on the Twitter channel, and to which nobody's responding because nobody sees the content because of pathetic censorship in the form of shadow bans, deboosting, and other nonsense on big tech platforms like Google, Facebook, Apple, Twitter, etc. We've got some filaments to name. I'm going to say is it 2 or 3? I don't know. But there are lots of filaments. The likelihood of additional Earth-directed possible coronal mass ejections here very, very high. All those dark absorption features, those are all filaments. All these bright features hanging off the limb, those are prominences, which are essentially the same thing. By the way, take a moment to press like and subscribe if you haven't, and make sure you follow us on Twitter. We've noticed some issues with certain types of social media platforms. Certain companies will remain unnamed. However, there are some issues. So it's not just Twitter. Twitter is still as pathetic as it's been. I get to see Elon's tweets, even though I don't follow him. What a crock. We've got 18,000 tweets and 336 followers. We've been losing followers since Elon took over because the platform is utterly, utterly broken. Content moderation has not changed, folks. Shadow bans have not been lifted. Some accounts have been reinstated. Elon has grabbed the microphone, and little has been done. Free speech is not restored. Here's the Go 16 SUVI over the past couple of hours, and what is going on down here? Very strange filamentary behavior going on over there. Perhaps some filaments rising there from behind the corona. That's my best guess. I think they're just coming into view from the hazy, hazy corona. Pretty strange looking, though. That is the last about 2.5 hours from the Go 16 SUVI with its great wide field of view. You can see another CME activity happening up here, perhaps. We'll stream it throughout the day. Here's the last 24 hours and 171 angstroms from SDO. And let's get into bonus features. So satellite charging hazards are non-existent. It's smooth sailing for satellites here at the moment. The GOES electron flux is actually quite low here, surprisingly low. There it is over the past 3 days. There is the forecast model expecting even lower levels of electron flux. So it's an electron shortage, folks. Oh my God, it's an electron shortage. Next, relativistic particles over the past relativistic electrons over the past 3 years. That's our greater than 2 mega electron volt electron fluence. We'll also show the F ionosphere layer, in which we've been showing the movement of the South Atlantic anomaly. So this portion of the ionosphere, the F layer, is located at 300 kilometers of altitude. Here's the vibrational frequency. And if you're familiar enough with this imagery, you may realize that the South Atlantic anomaly is no longer over the South American continent. It's now over the South Pacific, someplace around here. which is odd, something we weren't expecting, and it happened rather rapidly with basically no warning. It'll be more obvious in the anomalygram. So right here is clearly the new location for the South Atlantic anomaly. I noticed it a few days before I reported on it because I wanted to make sure that it was really going on. And it is certainly still in that location. So it has moved several hundred miles to the west-southwest from where it was over the South American continent. It was like here before, and now it's way over here. So that's probably over 1,000 miles of movement, actually, of the location of the South Atlantic anomaly. Here's the latest image. That's 12:45 Universal Time. Ionogram, there's 12:45 Universal Time. Anomalygram, and once again, you can see it right there. The huge striation between high and low frequency anomaly. That's the spot right there. It's now at about 30 degrees south latitude by about 115 degrees west longitude. Next, looking at the total electron content forecast, as we've been seeing some anomalies here as well, some oddities indeed with the free electrons. There is the global map. The current hotspot is the African Rift Zone there, in between Madagascar and the main African continent. And here is the worldwide view, the total electron content forecast imagery, as we see continued anomalies there. Electrons are well out of place. This is something we see more often during coronal hole high-speed winds, but at the moment, lots of GPS errors, so including some major ones over the U.S. Total electron content forecast shows us the free electrons between your GPS satellite and your handset from ground level to about 12,500 miles of altitude. Next, our latest intensity gram and our latest colorized magnetogram. Once again, this new sunspot group 3169 is quite magnetically complex. You can see lots of different colors mixed in there. That is the opposite polarities. It is certainly beta gamma class. Not sure if it's beta gamma delta class or not, but we'll be monitoring that throughout the day. This group down here is looking pretty interesting as well. Let's take a look at that. What the heck happened? Let's try that again. That's better, I guess. There are the fields. And if you don't follow the Twitch channel, let's talk about the Twitch channel here for a quick moment. We put up a video yesterday about 25 minutes long, muddling around about this comet that we saw yesterday because it looked like there might have been a comet impact. So we did a video about it yesterday on Twitch, a little 25-minute live stream. And, well, we may have captured a comet impact, a solar comet impact. So you can check that at twitch.tv/smashomash. And here's the comet that we were talking about. Right there, you can see it moving past my pointer right there. And there was an interesting spontaneous prominence that happened there in front of sunspot 3169. So that's sort of what we were looking at. Nothing definitive here, but the possibility that there was some sort of a signal showing up there as a result of that comet impact. So we checked it out, not exactly sure. Eugene, drop us a line if you noticed this. There was another spontaneous prominence there a little bit north of this area as well. So I'm not sure if that comet broke up or if it made it past or if it was indeed destroyed by things like solar radiation and, broke up, vaporized, etc. But we did notice it. By the way, check our links for our Hemp Lucid products as well. If you haven't checked out our Hemp Lucid products, here is a large portion of the product line. They are quite good indeed. So if you haven't tested those out yet, maybe do a test run. Do some shopping via our link. Support the channel that way. They've even got CBD for your pets, as well as testimonials right there on the website, even some THC-free products. What are people saying? Go have a look via our link. So we've moved to the realm of meteorology. Well, I discovered that it's too easy to forecast the weather about 15 years ago. So doing space weather is a greater challenge. However, we've decided to pack some meteorology stuff into our space weather videos because people like facts. People like facts, no matter how controversial they are, in the year 2020. So there you go. There's the temperature, the surface temperature for the northern hemisphere. And there are the surface temperatures for the southern hemisphere. Antarctica's warming up as summer approaches. No, the seasons don't count as climate change. Climate is like 30 years of temperature. All right, so there we go. There are the surface winds of the eastern world. Here are the jet streams of the east. The jet streams being the most definitive single measurement of global weather patterns. If you wanted to forecast global weather patterns with only one factor, the jet stream would be the way to go, I think. Next, the western world's jet streams. There you go. Tripled up jet streams there over the Pacific Ocean, and a convergence over the Atlantic Ocean. Next, surface winds. Surface winds of the central world are looking like this, and jet streams of the central world are looking like this. Some very high winds there around Iceland in the North Sea. And let's continue on as there's plenty more to cover. So these are clouds and fog over the Americas. The 3.9 nanometer radiation satellite, part of the infrared spectrum. 3.9 nanometer radiation allows you to see clouds and fog when it's too dark to use the visible satellite, like it is over about half of this imagery here. And let's continue on to our weather.gov map. If your county's lit, click your county. We've got some wind chill warnings there over most of Montana as some Arctic air from Canada makes its way through. Some freeze warnings there around the Gulf Coast. If your county's lit, click your county on weather.gov. Here is your forecast for temperature anomaly. You see some very cold temperatures there coming through up to like 16 degrees Celsius. Make it more like 20 degrees Celsius below normal in places like Montana there in the next 3 days. That's your GFS temperature anomaly forecast for the next 72 hours. It is in degrees Celsius. Here is your GFS 72-hour jet stream forecast at 250 millibar winds. That is what the jet stream will be doing over the next 3 days. Once again, temperature anomaly and the jet stream. Next, let's look at something we don't normally look at. How about low clouds? There is your low cloud scenario, and quite a lot of low clouds here over the northern portion of the U.S. Low clouds, one of the many features of windy.com. Windy.com, they've got a great mobile app as well. Let's check out lightning. Miami has seen some thunder and lightning over the past 12 hours for sure. And let's check our real-time lightning map to see what's going on. Got some lightning to Miami's east, it looks like. Some Bahamian lightning happening there. Anyway, that's your real-time lightning map. To show you the teeth of the current storms, we use blitzortung.org. It's just splentacular. Next, we'll close things out with U.S. Doppler radar, water vapor, and clouds and fog. There is the animated map for the U.S. Some precipitation there striking Hawaii. We'll focus on the lower 48. Looks like some snow falling south of the Great Lakes. Here's your clouds and fog imagery. And this should be water vapor, but something has occurred. And there you go. There is your water vapor map. Dry air over the southeastern portion of the U.S. It's likely clear skies over places like North Carolina. Here's your recap. U.S. Doppler radar. Clouds and fog with the shortwave radiation satellite. And the water vapor should clear things up. There is a low here around Yuma, Arizona there, right near the California-Arizona border. You can see that rotating low-pressure system. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that was interesting. Was it good for you? Press like and subscribe. If it was, press the share button. Leave us a comment. Tell your friends and foes about us. We'll see you next time here from the Smash News Network. In the meantime, I'll have been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off. And may that solar wind be at your back. Facts stated in this video are not necessarily facts suppressed by big tech organizations. Facts are endorsed by the Smash News Network, least busted name in news.